Thank you for coming in. We'd like to welcome Victoria Bradford, a candidate for Evergreen Public Schools Board, and would like to note that your opponent, Frank Decker, declined our invitation to meet with this forum today. Also would like to introduce reporter Lauren Dake. She'll be taking notes and she won't be asking questions in this forum, but she might want to speak with you afterwards. Might have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
And finally, we are videotaping this for use on our website, just so you know. And we post all of our meetings unedited for the benefit of our readers. So we'll get started with an introduction. Go ahead and tell us who you are, a little bit about your background, and why you were running.
Okay. Well, my name is Victoria Bradford, and I have been your elected official on the school board for 16 years, so this is a re-election for me. I've lived in Vancouver for 25 years now, and both of my daughters came up through the Evergreen school system, so they're products of Evergreen schools, and I'm really proud of them. They've done very well. I'm a business owner in town, and so I definitely come with some pretty good experience in what it's like to operate a business and the challenges and excitement that faces. So that's me in a nutshell.
Great, well thank you. Start with a general question. In your mind, what is the biggest challenge facing Evergreen Public Schools as we go forward?
That's a very easy question because, and it's very timely in what's happening in the community right now, and it's our poverty issues. We have, almost 50% of our kids that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and when you have children in poverty, it comes into the classroom and it poses quite a few issues, and you see it nationally, you see it locally, and it's grown considerably. When I first started on the board, we were 26% free and reduced lunch, so in a very short period of time we've seen that dramatically increase, and it's a big challenge. I feel really good about, though, where we are with that issue. We have brought in nationally known experts in this field that we're working with, and all of our staff are working with these experts to help us identify ways that we can be most effective in dealing with this very challenging situation. The board went through the training. We've got all of our classified staff going through the training this week, so that everybody from the janitor to the people that they see first when they come into the school, to teachers, administrators, are all working on this issue because it's huge.
Is it Donna Beagle who's?
She's one of them.
She's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me ask you a follow-up question to this poverty thing. I guess it's would be a two-part question. The first part is, would you agree that school districts, including the Evergreen School District, have sort of morphed from an educational system into an educational system that weighs heavily on the welfare of its students in areas other than education? Everything from transportation, getting kids to the school district, to meals, even to the extent where there are some school districts that are actually finding ways to provide meals for children during the summertime when they're obviously not in school. So would you agree that that's true? And then the second part of that question is that what school districts should be doing?
Well, I agree that that's true, and I wish that we didn't have to do that, but we do. It's our reality. If we don't have kids in the classroom that are ready to learn and that have their basic needs met, they're not learning. And we hear a lot of conversation out there in the greater world, in the media, about test scores and accountability, but statistically, when you look at the children that have the most challenging test scores, there almost always are children that come from poverty. And it's not a local thing, it's a national thing. So Yes, do I wish that we didn't have to provide all these wraparound services? But we do. If we want to get kids over the bar and break the cycle of poverty, they've got to be able to get a good education. And we've got to do what we have to do to make that happen. And it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work.
Do you feel, though, that potentially you are enabling the social system, the parents, for example, that when you take on that responsibility, essentially parents can say, well, we don't have to do it, somebody else is doing it for us. You've enabled them to not take on that responsibility?
I don't think that's true. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of people that are struggling out there. They don't want their kids to go hungry. That is not something that most parents are willing to do. So they're working hard. You know, there's kind of a misconception that if somebody is poor, that they're lazy. But we're not finding that to be the case. The majority of our parents that are financially struggling are hardworking parents doing the best that they can, and they need support. It's not enabling, it's giving a hand up so that their kid can break that cycle. So, you know, there used to be a time back when we were younger where, you know, that whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of mentality kind of worked. I mean, if you were diligent and you worked hard, it's a different world now. It's just not that easy to say pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you're going to make it happen. The world is just so much more complicated. And when you're talking about a global economy and our kids going out into a world where they have to compete globally, it's just not that simple anymore. But we really want to work very hard with our families to give them assistance, but we can't pay for their rent and do everything for them, but we want to plug them in to places that they can get the kind of assistance they need. And then, you know, like with our family resource centers, we've got computers in there, and we have people there willing to help them work on resumes, applying for jobs. So just being a resource is important, I think, for helping these families out.
Let's move on to some curriculum questions, and a big national concern for some people has been Common Core and Common Core standards. How is Evergreen implementing those? What are your personal feelings about Common Core?
My personal feelings about Common Core is that it's not the big, horrible, scary thing that some people would like to make it out to be. If you really, really look at Common Core, it's about having, you know, consistent standards throughout the United States. So, you know, as we are a much more mobile society, you know that the education that children are getting throughout the country is pretty consistent as far as the outcomes. But it's still a local issue as to how we implement Common Core and how we teach those subjects. So, you know, we still review the curriculum, we still look at the textbook adoptions, and we still talk about how we're going to be delivering instruction in our schools. So I don't worry about Common Core so much. It really doesn't affect how we're delivering instruction in our schools. I think we are about a rigorous course curriculum, and that's what we're going to stick to. So I'm not worried about it.
And I think, just to echo that, I think it's important. A lot of people misunderstand that the curriculum is still devised on a local level. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
But standards are on a national level.
Correct.
So in a general sense, would your preference be, do you like having national standards, or should all of that be at the state and the local level?
I like it that how we implement and the curriculum we select is local, because different districts and different communities have different expectations, and so I like it that we do that, and I think we're pretty thorough with that. I don't mind a national kind of overarching standard that guarantees that all kids are going to receive a quality education. I do feel that the federal government has kind of overreached their boundaries, and is implementing criteria that I think are not really consistent what we know is good learning. So
Like,
that piece.
what would be an example of that?
So an example of that is, you know, the whole issue in Race for the Top dollars, having to have your teacher assessments tied to student scores. Well, the research is pretty solid that really doesn't work and it's not accurate. And I don't think it's fair to teachers, and it's really not fair to parents, because, you know, we have a teacher that's, say, teaching 4th grade. They're not the person who taught the 3 years before, but that's the teacher that's, you know, you're going to base their evaluation on that test score. It also doesn't cover all subject matters, but yet how do you provide a consistent form of evaluation for all teachers? It's just so inconsistent. And the other issue that I have with it is we have, like I said, we have a high mobility rate. Some of it's okay mobility, people getting transferred because of their job and things of that nature, but we also have a high mobility rate among our kids of poverty. And so teachers are teaching kids, they're only having them for part of the time. So to be held accountable for kids that weren't even in your system the year before, to me is it's just an equity and fairness issue. And it doesn't statistically prove that teacher's better or not. It really is not a good evaluation.
Given that, how should teachers be evaluated?
I like our TPAP model in our school district, and we adopted that years before the state mandated it. It is a growth model. It is about continuous improvement for the employee, and we have it for our principals as well as our teachers. And I think it's a pretty rigorous rubric of expectations and a very fair evaluation. And we did this with full approval of our teachers, and they know how accurate the measure is, and so I think that's a good thing. But to take a test score, it doesn't really reflect what the performance of that particular teacher is at any given point in time.
Do you think when you consider number of work days, pay, benefits, and pensions, that Evergreen school teachers are better off, worse off, or about the same as the average person out in Clark County?
I think it probably depends on the teacher and how long they've been in our system. A beginning teacher is, and I have a daughter that this is her first year teaching up in Woodland, and you know, it's for someone with a master's degree, that salary is not exactly huge, and she is going to be living pretty lean. But then we have other teachers that have been in the system for a while that make a good living, have good benefits. Do I think they're overpaid? Absolutely not. I think they've earned everything that they have. So, you know, it varies widely with experience over time.
Do you have any idea of how many teachers might apply to the Evergreen School District versus how many openings you get?
Well, I can tell you that we're a very popular place to apply because our district is well thought of in the educational community. But I also know that we have a shortage right now. We're looking for high school math teachers and science teachers, and there's a shortage there because at the secondary level you have to have, you know, your credentials in those categories, and that is an area that we just are not getting as many applicants as we would like to have.
Overall, you get more applicants than you have openings.
Usually. Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a shortage in some areas. Is that shortage endemic for other districts
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yes, and special ed is another one, you know, teachers with their certifications in special ed, it's challenging.
Well, what does that say about, I guess, the teachers who have come out of school, that they're not, willing to do the tough ones and want the easy ones? Why would there be a shortage of that, and I guess what, not history teachers, for example?
I think what happens in particular with, say, math teachers is oftentimes people that are predisposed to that subject and enjoy it and like it, they have many more opportunities that they can make a lot more money as an entry-level employee. You know, they might be going into engineering or, you know, other.
Not a lot of options for those history majors?
Not usually. Although my husband was a history major and he ended up being a pilot, so, you know, there's always hope. No, I mean, you have to have a passion for teaching. Working with kids is not easy. It's a challenging field to be in. All I know is I did one class of as the art discovery mom when one of my daughters was in kindergarten, and I had a major episode with plaster of Paris, and I said, I don't know how they do it every day. So, and that was only for a couple of hours.
And one of the reasons why I ask those questions is as a school board member, I'm assuming you always have to try to balance the burden that school taxes put on the taxpayer versus the packages that are given to teachers, other expenses as well. And so you're always sort of in this balancing act. And so, just to give you an opportunity to expand on this a little bit, so when you say that, you know, that there are likely a lot of teachers out there that deserve more, or at least deserve everything they get, how does that balance with the taxpayers who say, I can't keep paying this amount?
And we're very sensitive to that. I think what you have to do is first prioritize where you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. And for us, it's always in the classroom. I mean, we want to keep our teachers teaching in the classroom, and we like to keep our class sizes reasonable and invest in our staff. We spend a lot of money investing in professional development of our employees, and that's part of why somebody comes to work in our district, is they know we will invest in them and their professional development. But we also have to be cognizant, you know, we're a district that doesn't have the property values that other districts have, so when we put something out to the taxpayers, they're paying more per thousand for, say, a bond than they would in a neighboring district. And so we have to balance that. So we've been really good about the efficiencies that we have in our district. I mean, I kind of feel like we're shortchanged in the recognition we get for just our energy savings alone, over $10 million because of our comprehensive energy saving program. I mean, we're recognized nationally as one of the few districts in the nation that's been a sustained Energy Star partner. That is a huge amount of money. That savings is what allows us to do what we want to do as staff. It's how we funded a big chunk of going to all-day kindergarten before it was paid for by the state, because we knew it was the right thing to do.
Do you know what your general turnover is with teachers?
You know, I don't. I mean,
You know
it's
if
low.
it's
It's
low.
low. It's low.
Doesn't that, I mean, obviously on some level that talks about one of the points that you were making, that a lot of people want to teach at the Evergreen School District because of the quality of the school district. But doesn't that, when you're looking at sort of balancing what to give teachers, weighed up against what the taxpayers are paying, a low turnover rate suggests that people are relatively happy in what they're doing. Would that be a fair thing to say?
I think it's a very fair thing to say.
Okay.
You know, we make not only investments in salaries and benefits with our employees, but also, like I said, with professional development, with quality work conditions, and with a real respectful relationship that we have with them. I mean, we don't have major conflicts in our district.
Speaking of conflict.
I was waiting for this one.
No. Council teachers are still out on strike right now. Would you ever accept teachers going out on strike in Evergreen?
it's not about accepting them going on strike, and I've had this conversation with the WA when they interviewed me. I'm a big believer that good relationships don't happen during negotiations. You need to have an ongoing good relationship throughout the whole relationship with our different groups, and so we work on that really hard. I think that when we had the walkout earlier this year, I understood why they walked out and quite frankly felt like they were righteous in their feelings about it, but I didn't think the walkout was the best way to get that point across. I think it was really burdensome to families, and it wasn't good for kids. Kids need to be in school consistently. A strike situation, you know, I don't know that, I'm not knowledgeable of the intimate details that are going on up in Kelso, but I think it's bigger than the district. I think there's forces at play that, you know, and so that piece of it I find a little disturbing. But I also feel strongly that this whole situation with McCleary and the legislature's lack of action, especially in dealing with compensation, is not helping the situation. And people are frustrated. They want action. They want an answer, and they want results from it. But yet you've got the legislature, on the other hand, who only has a finite amount of money and other other demands for the money. It is a really, really big problem. It's a hot mess. I mean, the whole thing is really challenging. So
let's talk a little bit about McCleary.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's a huge issue. I think everybody, generally speaking, knows what it is. And just to sort of set the stage for this question, essentially McCleary is saying that it's the state's paramount duty to take care of funding for education. McCleary is not saying that in the overall context of the funding that comes into schools, because we know local districts put funding into schools, McCleary is not saying that the amount of money that school districts get should be increased. It's saying the amount of money that the state provides for those school districts should be increased because it's their paramount duty. When you appreciate that distinction, we also know that local school levies were originally intended to simply do the bells and whistles for schools, and because of the state's lack of funding, local school districts have increasingly increased levies to do very fundamental basic things, like helping to pay for teachers, like adding teachers to the school district.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's out there. If in fact the state legislature steps up and provides the funding that would meet McCleary and their paramount duty, by extension, wouldn't it also mean that school districts would be able to reduce the local levies that they are now putting on local taxpayers?
I think that's a really good assessment.
And you would be in favor of that?
I would be totally in favor of that. You know, we actually will be having kind of a sunset on just the levy lid right now, so that's hanging out there. We had a conversation about that Tuesday night, is we're looking to lose a significant amount of money because our levy lid's gonna go down. And so that's going to be a challenge, and if they don't deal with that issue pretty soon, we could be looking at funding challenges all over again locally.
Right. Well, and there are some critics of the process, and that's the reason why I asked the question. There are critics of this process that say, if McCleary happens and the state steps up, and in the past, local school districts have been essentially providing money that the state wasn't providing, that they would stay pat. The school districts would get more money from the McCleary decision, and all of a sudden there doesn't seem to be an equitable help for the taxpayers in that scenario.
Well, I think the taxpayer always has the right to vote no. You know, if we put a levy out there, they can vote no, but I think it would be irresponsible of a district to not
Take into
really.
account.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna see though some things happen. I mean, one of the big conversations is about levy swaps. That's kind of one of the avenues that they can grab some funds. So it'll come out of our local, but it'll end up in the state pot. And you've got some areas like in Puget Sound that, you know, that will impact them way more than it will impact us. I mean, we're already up there, so
Yeah.
we'll actually benefit in a way from that. But what I get concerned about is the minute money starts going into the general fund, will it be kept for the purpose of what that swap went in there for? And so I would hope that if we have any kind of legislative action regarding that, that there's some caveats in that legislation that would prevent that from happening as well. Yeah.
Speaking of budgets, and earlier you mentioned efficiencies, and do you know what percentage of the Evergreen budget goes to central administration, and how does that compare?
It's under 5%. It's right at about 4.9%.
And I think is that fairly low?
It's the lowest of districts of, you know, sizable districts in the state. Yeah, and we're really proud of that. During the economic dip, that's where we took all of our cuts, and we cut significantly. And the thing that I like to share with people about those cuts is, you know, yes, we cut close to 40% of our central office administration. It doesn't mean that there were too many people there, but it means the people are working a lot harder, and we haven't been eager to replace a bunch of them either. But I get concerned sometimes that, you know, we're asking people to work a lot harder, when I really want to see everybody being the most effective at their job that they can be. But they've done a marvelous job, and John's been a good leader in that. And the hires that he has made have mostly been to replace people that are retiring or moved to other districts. So we're pretty lean in that regard. And you know, they're still in those portables out there at the central office.
So how do you grade your superintendent? A to F?
A.
Anything he needs to improve on?
He doesn't take his vacations away, he probably should.
This
And
is
sometimes he doesn't tell the board what we want to hear. So, you know, but no, I think he's done a really good job. It's been interesting. When we hired John, at first he was just kind of interim, and the thing we were most concerned about him was the whole community interaction piece. We knew he was solid in the curriculum and solid as an educator, but could he handle that whole role as a leader of the district out in the community? And that turns out to be his biggest strength in so many ways. I mean, he has done a great job out there.
So when he doesn't take his vacation, does his contract say you pay him for that?
Well, yeah, we can pay him up to a certain amount, but he's doing better now. We've kind of said, you need the break, go. So yeah.
Victoria, you know that our kids attended Evergreen and had great educations. And it's been about 5 years since they've been in the district. But one of the areas when our kids were in there that I saw this need, this group of kids that really needed help, and they weren't, I'm not sure they were getting everything they could, and I know the district can't do it all. But it was the ADD kids, the ADHD, the kids with dyslexia. Has there been any strides made in that group? I know that you're working now with, you know, kids with poverty. I mean, I don't think it was as prevalent even 5 years ago. But I'm just curious about that group of kids with ADD, ADHD, and dyslexia.
I think we know more now. The research is really improved every year. More and more information is coming out. Same thing with autism. I think our special ed department, because kids would probably fall under that if they've been diagnosed as ADD and need an IEP. So I think, yes, that has improved. We also have looked at things like, we have a major technology initiative that we're in the process of rolling out. And a lot of kids with those special needs do really well with some of the technology solutions that we have. And so, yes, I think we're seeing some strides being made there for kids with special needs. And we're seeing a lot more kids with special needs. It's just really interesting. And I don't know if it's just that we're diagnosing better and doctors are diagnosing better, but it's a challenge. We're right up to our cap, the federal cap on special ed. Mm-hmm.
So then what do you do if that population continues to increase?
Well, we don't get more money for it. The federal government will only pay to a certain amount, and so we fund it out of levy dollars. Yeah.
Is that based on a percentage of the total
Mhm.
population?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just like close to 13%. But it can encompass kids that have, you know, a basic learning disorder but they're in the regular classroom, and so the interventions there are a little bit simpler, to our really severely impacted kids, and so the range of need is huge in that category. I mean, one of my daughter's she wasn't under special ed because she didn't have any educational deficiencies, but she's hearing impaired. And the district did a great job, and it was because of the screening that she had in kindergarten that we even knew she had a hearing impairment. But she was so verbal and so doing so well with reading and in school that she masked it really well. And then they did that, and so she ended up with amplification, and she wears hearing aids now, and problem was dealt with. So, yeah.
A couple of years ago, the district opened Henrietta Labs.
Mhm.
How has that worked out?
It's worked out beautifully.
How
It's
many?
everything
What's the
we
enrollment?
hoped. When we're at full capacity, we'll be right around 600 students. So every year it grows because we just started with the first 2 years, freshmen and sophomores, and now we're now up to our freshman class, or our senior class this year will be our first class to graduate. So I'm kind of excited. It's, you know, that was a school that was a long time in the making. I mean, we definitely had ups and downs as to whether it was even going to happen. You know, just the financing of it, being able to take advantage of some stimulus money that allowed us to build it without a bond. So that was kind of a blessing right there. But the smaller school environment is everything we thought it would be, but it also is an opportunity for some kids that just need a different approach to what they're doing. And, you know, we talk a lot about innovation in education, and we talk, you know, charter schools comes up all the time. And I just have always believed anything you can do in a charter school, we can do in any of our schools, and we do it. And Henrietta Lacks is a perfect example of an innovation in education that is working. The thing too that I'm really excited about, we don't know enough yet, but we know that if that school population is very indicative of the district's population. So our kids that are on free and reduced lunch there are doing really, really well. And so we're looking at what made the difference for those kids. I mean, some of our kind of initial theories is if you opt into that school, you're engaged, your parents are engaged, and we know that that's helpful for kids' success in school. But are there other factors that are playing into that we can really analyze? So as we disaggregate the data from test scores and other evaluations that we're making, it's going to be really interesting to see. And then how can we apply that into our other schools? You know, what changes do we need to make? You know, we've done really well as our most challenging population has increased dramatically, we have still kept pace with growth. And normally that's not the trend. That usually kind of stops growth in its tracks, or you kind of regress, and we're not seeing that kind of a trend. But we still have a gap that has to be addressed, and that's why the poverty initiative has become so critical. Because, you know, it's always easy with the low-hanging fruit. Now we're in the really, really hard stuff. So that's where our push is right now, is getting those kids up over the bar.
Now, is the district considering any additional magnet schools similar to?
I don't know that we're not currently considering any magnet schools, but we are constantly looking at what other programs and other offerings can we give to all of our students. Because the one thing we are kind of known for in our district is we don't have a haves and have-not kind of model. We don't kind of put all of our resources in one camp here and everybody else is kind of stuck with what they're stuck with. We really try to have an equity in our offerings throughout the district. So, you know, we have AP classes and pretty robust AP classes in every single one of our comprehensive high schools. Same thing with our CTE, or Career and Technical Education programs, and they're pretty robust programs. Everything from engineering and robotics and horticulture. I mean, it's a wide array to tap into the kids' needs for what's going to really engage them in school and keep them motivated as they're in school. And then, of course, we have the Skill Center, which we all know is a pretty amazing place.
Have you run into Frank Decker on the campaign trail?
My first well, I met with Frank the week of filing, and just to meet each other and we had a nice chat. And then my first encounter was Monday night. We both addressed the EEA large group of representatives, but we did not speak. He gave a couple-minute talk, and then I gave a little talk, and that was that.
Okay. So, so you've just been in that one forum with him?
Mm-hmm.
So other than written stuff on the web, you may not have a privy to some more information on where you and he may differ on issues? Or what was your thoughts on that? Since I can't ask him that.
I can guess. From Monday night's information, you know, that he gave, he was more motivated, I think, by the prospect of hiring the next superintendent. Whether it be, if he were to be elected, that it would be right away, or whether it would be when John's ready to retire. He did not appear to be happy with the superintendent, felt like he had a very heavy-handed management style. He also commented on the district must have too many administrators and people at central office because it's hard to find a parking spot. So, you know, in reading his website, and from that encounter, I feel strongly that he doesn't really understand our district. He has not been to any board meetings, so he's not been privy to the conversations that we're having regularly about what's going on in our schools. And, you know, he indicates on the website, you know, a desire to have a more CTE and work-related kinds of classes, but we have one of the best programs out there. So I find it curious that someone who used to work for our district and whose wife works in our district doesn't really seem to understand what's going on there right now.
Are the board meetings videotaped?
We don't videotape them, but they're open, you know, as you know, open
right.
Public meetings, and our workshops are open, and we have very few executive sessions, so it'd be pretty easy to know what's going on in our district by coming to those meetings.
So you, since you mentioned John's eventual retirement, is there any time frame on that?
You know, what's happened is that there's all this new excitement over some things we've got going on at the district with the LIFT initiative, which is our technology initiative, and then of course the work on poverty, that he keeps getting energized. And, you know, we've got a really good leadership team right now that is really running on all cylinders. And so it's kind of hard to lead. I kind of feel the same way as a board member, you know, as having been on as long as I have. You know, you would think it'd start getting old, but right now it's kind of exciting. We've got a lot of cool stuff happening, and I'm really proud of the work. You know, it's been a long time building, and you know, we've just been steadily going along, but now all of a sudden we're really hitting a tipping point that I think is going to be exciting to watch.
Does, in case John gets sweaty, does he have a personal shower in the office?
As a matter of fact, in John's portable, he has to walk all the way across to the other side of the building to even use the restroom.
Oh, okay. Well,
Good exercise.
Exactly.
and my last question is, would a student get a better education in the Evergreen School District or the Vancouver School District?
That's kind of a mean thing to ask me, because, you know, I believe in our district. I think, you know, our philosophy is that we want every child to graduate with the ability to have choices and options for their life. And, you know, we've been pretty open about declaring that we have a goal of 100% graduation rate. So, you know, I've never heard another district claim that goal. They'll say, you know, we want to improve X percentage or whatever, and no child is expendable in our district. So I personally think better with us. But you know what? There's some kids that have done great in Vancouver or will do great in Vancouver. So, you know, they're not our competition. And we partner with them quite a bit on things. Because you know what? A lot of times their kids are our kids. They're back and forth all the time. So we got to raise everybody up.
Great. Well, Victoria, give us your final pitch. Why should voters support you? And if you care to mention any endorsements.
Well, I think they should support me and vote for me because, you know, I've got a track record of responsible leadership, both on the academic side and the fiscal responsibility side. You know, I've managed to handle that balance really well. I think that the initiatives that we have going, we don't want to see stop. We want to continuously improve, and we're on a good track right now. So that would be my pitch. As far as endorsements, HROC has endorsed me and the WEA has endorsed me. There's some others that haven't been announced yet, so I don't think it's my job to announce those, but I'm sure you'll hear about it soon. Yeah,
Great. Well, thank you very much.
thank you.